There we go. Oh, well, the bans... Alright, hold on. I guess the pick bans will actually go pretty fast. Callista. Is this patch 6.1? If it is, it doesn't make sense to ban Tom. Because RF can't play it. And Remelia's probably not going to play it, obviously. So then it just doesn't make any sense. Especially when they ban out his Fiora, it doesn't make any sense not to just take it. I mean, people can talk about strategy and stuff all that you want, but Tom Kench is a pretty all-around versus all champ, and he doesn't actually go into certain team comps in a sense that he forces them to be one way. He's just god tier. So they've first picked Graves. It's fine. Respond with Corki Alistar. Okay. They respond Poppy Lucian. Okay. So then Poppy... Okay, so it can be Graves top, Poppy jungle, or Graves jungle, Poppy top with Lucian. That's completely fine. Although... I think masking Lucian a little bit longer would be wiser. But I don't know. Or masking Poppy, but I think that's irrelevant. Okay, wait a second. What? Why are teams doing this? What, like... I don't even get it. It doesn't even make any sense. I guess, like, maybe they think that Graves and Lucian are both relatively low range and low impact in terms of ranged combat. But it doesn't make any sense. You don't just pick a comp proactively. And then also, to show the Ezreal this early, they already selected their AD carry. Okay, the chances that Immortals is going to go for a third AD carry with this doesn't make any sense. There's no reason that Ezreal needs to be picked right here if you want to just secure something. Or not even necessarily Ezreal, but you could hide Nidalee. I don't think there's a reason to pick Nidalee yet. If you're not going to go for a counter pick mid, if you're going to just show that Corki or Ezreal is your mid lane, it doesn't make any sense to pick Nidalee. Like, just pick your top laner, because they've already shown their top. Okay, 100% they've already shown it. So just pick your top lane, because your jungler is going to be so crucial to this, and you have the ability to counter pick, and then if Nidalee is not picked yet, you still also have the option to tailor your draft to fight against Immortals, because they have to show their hand first. So their pick ban is... it's not good. Is that really Soraka? It's really nice. The Soraka pick's very nice. It counteracts basically everything that Renegades wants to do. This is the problem with this. Is these type of team comps, I don't even understand them. The triple poke. Like, if you're gonna do something like that, it just doesn't... I don't know. It doesn't fit. So, I mean, so here's the problem, is if Renegades doesn't get really far ahead, so let me just pause really quick here. Let me actually even zoom back a little to the champ select thing. So these are the thoughts that are going through my head as soon as this ends up being picked. So what happens is, in the early game, okay, Corki doesn't actually have an edge unless they do something relatively early on against Victor, because if Victor can reach Augment, then it's going to be completely fine. Now, in the jungler matchup, Corki has a little bit more of a proactive jungler, but despite being a proactive jungler, Victor and Poppy have the better counter gank, and they have the better match gank. And a match gank is just, like, Nidalee shows, Poppy shows, nothing happens. If Nidalee goes for a gank proactively and Poppy matches it, or meets it, then Victor and Poppy will always win. Because in order for Corki and Nidalee to go for a gank, they must overextend. And if they overextend and Poppy ends up appearing, they fall behind. The other problem with this is Corki gets his blue right around the time that Victor gets his initial power spike, and then when Corki runs out of blue, assuming that they hand it off at natural times because of red versus blue side, Victor wakes up with his power spike when Corki needs his blue in order to sustain against Victor. So then what ends up happening is there's a lot of pressure applied to Nidalee, and Poppy doesn't need to protect Victor as much, and Poppy doesn't need to apply as much pressure mid lane. So that's just how this dynamic goes. I don't know much about Graves versus Trundle, because I haven't been back that long. I've been back less than 2 weeks. So I'm not really too sure about how that matchup goes, but it is a blue side Graves against a red side Trundle. So Graves has a lot of options that Trundle doesn't have, just by being blue side. And again, because he has a defense-oriented jungler, not necessarily that Poppy must always be defensive. Poppy can obviously be proactive and be offensive. Poppy benefits a lot more with this top and mid from counter ganks and from match ganks than Nidalee does. And because Nidalee is only proactive and she's very linear in what she attempts to do, if Poppy ever does successfully pull off a counter gank or a match gank, Nidalee falls further behind than she normally would because of who Poppy's top and mid are. And so that's just important to mention. Now, when we reach into the mid game, okay, you need to give your blue buff to Corki, and then obviously Victor gets the blue. The problem is that Corki and Ezreal are not going to be at any point where they can actually clear waves. So one of the big issues for Renegades is they don't have sufficient wave clear without, dipping into their mana pool, quite heavily. The other problem with this is OQ and Corki are heavily reliant on power spike timings. Whereas Victor is interesting because he hits this point where he just keeps getting stronger, but once he hits that point, he doesn't ever slow down. Ezreal and Corki do hit points where they slow down. They hit their first core item, they're really strong for a short period of time, and then once everyone picks up to speed with them, they end up just stagnating. Victor's usually never like that, so that's pretty interesting. So now Victor has the ability with his E to really put a lot of pressure onto Renegades, and also because of their red side, it makes approaching onto Baron and onto Dragon really difficult, even though their angles are their angles of approach are supportive of how their champions try to attack into it. So obviously I'm just talking about, you have Dragon Pit and whatever, and then you have the entrance to blue, and then you have the entrance into Dragon over here, etc. So it benefits Corki, Ezreal, and Nidalee. The problem, however, comes at 25 minutes. So if Renegades is even, or they're behind at 25 minutes, or they're only slightly ahead, so this is bad. So they cannot be slightly ahead, they can't be even, or they can't be behind. They have to be really far ahead. Or they need to make it to 50 minutes. And even if you make it to 50 minutes, now you're facing one of the only hyper carry supports, which is Soraka. And the reason that I call Soraka a hyper carry support is because that's exactly what she is. She's basically virtually unkillable. She completely skews your damage perception inside of teamfights, and she makes it extremely difficult to coordinate against. And when you have a team comp that is reliant on siege and poke in the later stages of the game, and Soraka just presses W once to basically negate the one spear or the one mystic shot or rocket that you did end up landing, it becomes extremely difficult to actually fight for position. So this whole pick ban is a complete fucking disaster. Renegades has like a 5-minute window where they have any sort of potency, and that's usually going to be around the 4th items. And even then, the 4th items, I mean, that's a very small window considering everyone's GPM spikes at that point, and it's very easy to allocate gold wherever necessary for Immortals, relative to wherever Renegades' gold is, building up. So if they have a ton of gold into Corki, or they have a ton of gold into Trundle, it becomes very easy for Immortals to just change gears and adjust relative to that. And so Immortals wins out really big here in picks and bans, and Renegades has an extremely small timing window, or they have to get really, really far ahead. But if your goal is to get really, really far ahead, it doesn't make any sense to have this combo coming out of top jungle and mid jungle. Even though it is sort of a powerful combo in maybe some cases, it's not in this case because they have defense, they have hybrid top, and they have hybrid jungle, and then they have offensive control mid, which I'm not going to classify Victor as hybrid, but maybe some of these terminologies aren't making sense to some people, but it makes sense in my mind. Graves is hybrid in the sense that because he's blue side, he's able to have a few gears that Trundle doesn't have because of the lane dynamics, and even though Graves, yes, he can push, he doesn't have to necessarily. And then because of Poppy's match or counter ganks, it provides a lot of utility defensive-wise, and then Victor is offensive, but he's more control-based, given how he can play out his lanes, either just using the laser outright, or slowly playing it with just Qs and, using laser occasionally. Whatever. Anyway, there's more I want to say, but I don't want to keep it paused, but I mean, I could talk about certain stuff. But it's a pick ban disaster. I don't like team comps like this. I don't like team comps that say we have to outplay you via pressure. I hate that. I fucking hate aggression. The other problem is Blue Ezreal doesn't even have a lot of EV here. Not against these champions. I mean, he has EV in 1v2 scenarios and obviously 1v1, unless it's against Victor. He has no EV there. But it sort of takes away from Ezreal. So they're just doing a fan out. This is completely fine. Neither team really benefits very much from an invade. And neither team really benefits that much from intel early on, so this is completely fine. They're doing the line swap? Okay. This makes sense, because Trundle will be hurt from it more than Graves would. They're sending Graves straight to the lane. I'm not totally sure what this is all about, because you should just lose. I don't know. What were they expecting to happen? What? It's 2016. What? The hell was that? Maybe there's something I'm not noticing about experience. Maybe he went there and he got a little bit of XP, and it enables Poppy to do something different for like level 4, and it enables Grave to do something with level 2. But for the most part, that just doesn't make any sense, because it's completely time inefficient. And now what ends up happening is Nidalee can just go down, they can 4-man the tower, let Immortals take top tower, and then you respawn with Dragon, and then you lane swap accordingly because of how bad Immortals just played that opening. Doesn't make any sense. If they choose to go for the number 2, that should be Immortals' proper response. Okay, and it does seem like that's going to be the case. And if you feel like they're doing that, then you recall Alistar and then you teleport Trundle. That would be completely fine. So you recall Alistar, you teleport Trundle, and then you keep Ezreal in bot lane, because you know that there's no way that Poppy can be East-centric at that point in time, and that it enables Ezreal to keep on scaling. I don't like sending Ezreal into top lane, because now you have the two people that need to be where they need to be in bot lane, and now they're in top, and it doesn't make any sense. So they hand initiative back over to Immortals. This is what I was talking about Victor and Corki. Can you get him? No. Did he go heal on Victor? What? I guess I didn't even check out the summoners. Doesn't make any sense. You have Graves on top. No. Alright, whatever. No! Lucians, don't push! So if Lucian doesn't push here, it favors Immortals. They don't want this. No, Glacier it. He can Glacier it. He could have Glaciered it. So a Glacier is different from... Here, let me pause for a second, because I know some people don't understand some of the terminologies that I use. So you have a slow push, okay, which is when it starts, like there's some excess minions left over, maybe like 1 or 2, okay, and then the wave arrives. And so what ends up happening is the enemy's wave collides with this wave, except you have 2 additional minions, so what ends up happening is this wave slowly pushes forward, and then it ends up colliding further in front of the opponent's tower. But then there's glaciering. And glaciering is when you have like... you have a few minions left over, and then what ends up happening is you orchestrate you manipulate the wave in such a way that this wave is going to pile up, and then the next wave coming is going to pile up. And so it's a 3-wave push. And it's just really gigantic, and then it's very helpful for tower dives. It's much better than slow pushing for tower dives. And I'm sorry, I just misspoke. Glaciering would be using the 1 or 2 extra minions. Slow pushing would just be using like 3 or 4 in order to do it. This is good because you know Nidalee is on the bottom side of the map. This is not good. So when you extend this far forward, you have to ask yourself, what is, you know, what is the purpose of what you're doing, right? So you have RF in top lane, and there's Graves, who's overextended, but Graves is relatively safe because he knows that you can't be topside, because obviously he has vision of the bottom side of the map. So Graves gets free reign over Trundle, and it's also teleport versus teleport. Now in this case, you'll also notice that Graves has boots, and this is really good because of the way that they're playing out the lanes, because the boots will aid in, you know, running from point A to point B to point C. If it was just point A to point B, and he was playing defensively, then it would be bad to have boots, but that's not the case because of how early and fast the lanes got opened up. So now, what ends up happening is Renegades, they have to ask themselves, why are they here? So they have they have Corki in mid, and he's not really doing anything, and he's not in danger from the left-hand side at all, because he just can't get ganked from the left-hand side. And so because there's no chances of Graves, you know, running down through the red side jungle, and oh my god, I'm so cold right now, he's fine. So now you have 3 people that are going to be having control, usually of this. Okay, all of this area is going to be in Renegade's control. So when you have that, what do you want to be doing? Do you actually want to be shoving or poking underneath a tower this early against a Soraka, Lucian, and a Poppy? No, you don't want to be doing that at all. Instead, you want to be fortifying certain areas of the map, and you want to be controlling the vision game a lot, so that you're able to make them walk into blind spots, you know, because that's what your team comp benefits from, is just getting slight little edges, and not necessarily gimping them, but you want to make it so that they have to walk into dangerous territory, lose chunks of their HP, and then it ends up having to force them into certain situations for their rotations. But when you do stuff like this, it's just nonsensical, because you can't do it. Because, alright, so first off, let's say Lucian hits 6 and Ezreal hits 6, okay? The culling has a very long range and it enables a lot of chase and poke, okay? Soraka, in a 3-on-3 engagement, eventually is going to get the movement speed acceleration. Okay, so she's going to have a lot of utility in that sense. None of your champions can outrun Poppy. Alistar is never going to be hitting 6, which means that if there is any sort of engagement, or you slip up once, you're fucked. So Immortals benefits from this. So this is the thing that we talked about in the champ select thing, where Immortals benefits from counters, or, you know, like, they're on the defense, offense. And that's how Immortals should be playing throughout all of their lanes and through just, you know, the nature of everything. And obviously, yes, Renegades benefits from offense, but sometimes offense doesn't need to actually be attacking. Sometimes offense is gaining control of certain areas, denying vision in certain areas, you know, having more vision in certain areas than the opponent, so that they end up making choices that they think are ideal, but actually aren't ideal. You know, like thinking maybe some area is not warded, so they end up going for something around there. And then Renegades, who is a team that relies more heavily on information than the opponent's team comp, is able to make wiser choices and more intelligent plays based around that vision. And it's all about, like, trapping. Like, Renegade's team comp, when they choose to play the map, like, early on like this, it's all guerrilla warfare tactics. And if you don't know what guerrilla warfare is, you can just Google the term. But that's how they need to be playing right now. And they're not doing it. And they also benefit from dragons, which is also, it's weird not seeing any sort of investment or proactiveness in trying to secure dragons, because Renegades benefit so much from getting to that 2nd dragon, and they also benefit a lot from the 4th dragon, and then obviously anyone benefits from the 5th dragon. But the 2nd dragon and the 4th dragon are really crucial for Renegades' team comp, just because of how they work. And then also the 4th dragon, if they could have been securing dragons early on, would synergize really nicely with that 4th item spike that we talked about in the team select, or the champion select early on. Because otherwise you don't have a reliable way to fight against Victor. And now this is it. All Immortals needs to do is they need to just keep... No, Graves, stop it. See this? Horrendous. God damn it. It's probably the biggest mistake in professional League of Legends. And I think it's one that's very easy to rectify. There's no reason to do this. Could have just locked it there, and then what does Trundle do? He doesn't do anything. And now these are the situations. So this is what I was talking about in the mid-game. Okay, so here's the problem that Renegades is having. Okay, you hit him with, what is Corky's ult called? It's called, like, Jesus. The big one? Is that what it's called? Or is that the name of the passive one that's the big... I don't know what the hell it's called. But anyways, okay, let's say that Corky lands one hit. Or you say Ezreal lands a Mystic Shot. Soraka just presses W once. What do you do against that? Do you coin flip all in? And you have Alistar go in on them? No. Victor has too much control. Victor can place Gravity Field situationally, you know, and you can't do anything against it because your team is so reliant on a lack of constriction or, you know, freedom of movement that you can't do stuff like that. Your option of having Alistar just go in, flash, pound, and whatever doesn't work against IMT's team comp. They have way too much control and disengage when they need it, and Victor just offers way too much power for the line push. Like, what do they do against this? Oh my god, I didn't even think of the Herald. I haven't been back long enough. This is a nightmare. Now, it's a nightmare for Renegades, but it's also a nightmare for Immortals. Renegades benefits, obviously, very heavily from the Herald. I hope that that's its name still. But this is brutal. Giving it to Graves doesn't make any sense. Just give it to fucking Victor so that this doesn't happen, okay? You 4-man mid, and then you restrict access to the east side of the map, and you secure the dragon. Like, what is it with professional teams right now? Like, I don't understand. I think that the eastern side of the map is, like, I haven't watched that many games. I think I've maybe watched, like, 12 or something of professional games from Season 6, and Eastern vision control is so bizarre. And it's not even like there can be an argument for, you know, better time efficiency, because that's not even the case either. But some of the rotations that the teams are making are very poor. And here's the problem where they need to be going for pushes and sieges like that, but they can't. It's just not possible. It's too early on in the game to be able to, you know, expend that much mana for such little gain, because you can't reliably get the tower there, even though you need to bust it open. Having OQ lock bottom lane is really good. I think he should just continue to lock it, and hopefully he keeps spamming his tier, because they have a very big wake up. Stuff like this is okay. I think Poppy... Okay, Rainover ends up getting the kill. That's really good. When stuff like this happens and Renegades is forced to be picked apart... So this is a gear that I didn't even get to talk about in Champ Select. So if Immortals, for some reason, because Renegades just can't control their vision enough... And again, this is a team comp that relies heavily on offensive and neutral vision. And what I mean by neutral vision is vision that both pertains to offense and defense, in the sense that it's neutral areas. So what is neutral areas? Neutral areas is river. Okay, neutral areas is like this. These are neutral. Now, obviously, some people might classify this as defensive for either team, which it is, but it's still a neutral area because let's say that Corky ward's right here. Well, that is an offensive ward, but it's also defensive in some ways. It's not a blatant defensive ward like, say, right behind red, and that's a very small difference in, you know, coverage, right, for the ward itself, but it does matter in making the ward defensive or offensive. Now, Renegades benefits from having all neutral type wards and then all offense type wards. That way they can know exactly where the enemy's moving, when they're moving there, and what their routes are likely to be, especially if they're trying to keep track of Poppy. And because they're trying to do this, but they've failed in doing so, they've failed to execute what they need, they end up falling behind. And if, for some reason, Immortals can actually force them to do, like, split push style defenses, in the sense of, like, 1-3-1s or, like, 1-0-4s, etc., and Renegades, you have to understand, is a machine. they are a complete body of something, and that's how their team comp needs to operate in the later stages. So if you have Trundle in top lane and Ezreal in bot lane, they're not at their full strength. Because they benefit from being in a 5v5 scenario, or like a 4.5 versus 5. And what I mean by a 4.5 versus 5, I mean someone is off on the side waiting to pounce. Not literally, I don't mean Nidalee. But that's how they benefit. So if for some reason they can be forced into defending multiple areas on the map, like defending top, defending dragon, defending bot, etc., or defending mid, top, and dragon simultaneously, their team comp just can't do it, especially not given how far behind they've already fallen. So this is all, fine. But I don't like some of the macro decisions that Immortal has made, but it ends up being okay. And now they overextended. Should have just gotten the tower. Death by 1,000 cuts. Which is exactly what Renegades can't afford to happen. Alright. I really like the Hexcore Rush on Pulled Altar, because, again, they benefit so much from the control that Victor gives. And now being able to have Chaos Storm move even faster, I think is really nice. Okay. So now, Lucian's out of position. So this is Renegade's timing window, where they do have some chats. Sorry. Now Lucian's out of position, and he's overextended. What is it with teams in Dragon? What the hell? Okay, finally. Wow. Alright. Okay, Dragon number 1 goes to Immortals. Now, that's something that Renegades did not want to happen. Because, now, Renegades has a hard time securing the Dragon, but there was multiple windows that we talked about early on where they could have. But, again, we already said that they benefit greatly from Dragon number 2 and Dragon number 2 and Dragon number 4. They don't really benefit that great from Dragon number 3, because most of the ways that they end up fighting are siege-oriented. And so in a siege-oriented scenario, you don't really benefit that greatly from number 3, especially with how slippery most of their champions are. The slight little the movement won't really do anything. Now, the casters just said, how will Immortals force fights without having fight-forcing tools? Well, I guess, we're not looking at the same game, because I think Victor's E clearing an entire wave and then Lucian shooting a culling, on the backs of a Baron siege. I guess we're not looking at the same thing. But, so anyways, some people might remember a VOD review last week that we talked about a team that needed to fight on the backs of Baron, and Immortals is one of them. So Immortals, when they go for game-ending fights, it needs to be on the back of Baron, or it needs to be enticing Renegades to come into unfavorable locations inside of the river, or forcing Renegades to overextend, and then they need to fight. That's the only way that Immortals wins fight. And the casters are right that outside of Baron, they don't have any ways to force fights against Renegades. Usually, okay? Maybe like hyper late game when Victor just has a surplus of mana and he's basically infinite on it. And maybe if he has a blue buff, then yeah, then there's nothing Renegades can really do. But until that happens, they're right that Immortals doesn't have anything. Well, the way they made it sound, it's like Immortals doesn't have anything, but we know that's not true. Why did he flash? Okay. Alright, that's fine. Okay, that was I think that's actually fine. I think that's fine. Okay. Okay. And now here's the thing that we talked about, where Immortals is kind of picking them apart, which is really bizarre because you wouldn't expect that this would be possible. But it's obviously a very painful situation where Nidalee is being forced to be so defensive. I do like the Roa out of Nidalee. because at least it does show that Crumbs acknowledges that he's going to need a lot of mana early on, or later on, and you're not going to just get that from a mana regeneration item. And this is what they can't do. They can't break apart. There's no reason for Trundle to be in bot lane. First off, he even has teleport. This doesn't make any sense. Okay? And he went Titanic Hydra first. Why are you going Titanic Hydra when you have a Corki and when you have an Ezreal and a Nidalee? In what world do you need to deal damage? You would deal more damage with a fucking Thornmail against Lucian and Graves probably at this point than you would ever deal with Titanic Hydra. You're never going to be fighting Poppy 1v1. You're just going to be basically protecting your AD carry if that ever, comes down to it. And how much damage you deal to a Poppy is completely irrelevant. How much damage you deal to a Victor who presses Q every 2 seconds and just gets away from you because your pillar isn't up doesn't make any sense. So his item choice of going Titanic Hydra as some sort of means of combating the split push is nonsense, because if your thought process is you're gonna do something because the opponent is outplaying you or they're better than you at doing that, then it doesn't even make sense to A, pick the champion in the first place, and B, it doesn't make any sense to just kind of let them do it, because that's basically just like taking it at this point. That's basically like saying you know that you're gonna get raped by an HIV positive person, and so you begin taking PrEP or something in advance anyway. It doesn't make any sense. Like what? Also, I really like the Sterix. I don't know. Sterix on Graves. I think that's really intelligent because it synergizes really well with Soraka. So Immortals acknowledges, what is making them stay ahead, and I really like the death cap out of Victor as well. So this is all really intelligent itemizations coming out of Victor and coming out of Graves. Poppy's Dead Man's Plate, I think, is very wise as well, given how fast-paced and wide the game is. And now they're securing the second dragon. And this is, you see that Renegades is just trying to run around the map, and they can't really catch up to anything, which it's really, it's not just a testament to how well Immortals is playing, but it's more so a testament that they don't get how their team comp is supposed to coordinate and what it was supposed to do early on, because we saw in the first 10 minutes there was a lot of mistakes that they ended up making. Okay, and this is pretty much it. So these are the problems. Now, so I talked about it in Champion Select, where they can't do stuff like this. They can't have these extended engagements. Now, in some cases, okay, when you fight an engage comp, which Immortals is not an engage comp, when you fight an engage comp, let's say that there's an Aurelia in top, or and then a Poppy in jungle, and then let's say that there's maybe a LeBlanc in mid lane or something, and then I don't know who the AD carry is going to be. Maybe the AD carry is Vayne, etc. And you have a comp like Renegades has. Sometimes, the enemy is coming onto you, all right, and you guys are all in a concave, and you stand back shoot. This is a way to really wither down the opponent, and then when they're weak enough, then you turn. And that's what they were trying to do right there. But at that point, it's already lost, because Immortals doesn't have a composition that is really slowed down or deterred by that. That's pretty much it. And now just preventing OQ's recall is really good. I wouldn't have killed him. So this is actually something that I told to Honser once, and I think it was against Dyrus. So right here, I wouldn't even kill him. OQ can't kill you. Or I wouldn't kill him right away. Because there's other stuff you could do, so maybe just hit him with the W and then just stay outside of the brush. Just make him waste as much time as humanly possible, because that's basically affecting his recall. This seems really minor and it doesn't matter, but in the end it does. Imagine if you can add 10 more seconds to this death timer, and then you guys know that you're not recalling anyway. That's an additional 10 seconds that they won't have Ezreal for, say, a Baron, and that's pretty big. Especially if the wake-up timers for Corki and stuff, increase, the gap between Ezreal and Corki is, say, 30 seconds instead of 20. That's really big. Now, obviously, there's other instances where stuff can, cause problems, like, say, Dragon was going to come up and Corki would be up for it, but now Ezreal's not going to be because he's 10 seconds behind. Home guard irrelevant, already being inside of the game. I don't like that culling. That seems a little bit bizarre, because dealing damage to Alistar... Oh, if they're gonna Baron, okay, but alright, that culling is a little bit weird. Although, he does have a lot of cooldown So I guess it's not the worst, but I think you could have just gone top lane. You could have eat over the wall, gone top lane, and calling the wave, and then backed up and recalled, because he already showed that he was recalling anyway, and they didn't have any incentive to do Baron. Having Graves in bot lane here, I think, is also okay, because RF hasn't shown that he's been able to kill him, and he keeps getting pushed back. So just, again, it looks really good that, Immortals is able to somehow force this Renegades team to have to respond to split pushes when that should not have been how this game was playing out. Game's over. So in a tournament setting, well, yeah, okay, the game's over. You could just recall and Baron, although it looks like it's over. Yeah, okay. If you wanted to be super safe and just prevent any chance of Renegades coming back, like any at all, you could just recall and Baron. So that was fine. So I don't know why there's like 16 minutes. I'm gonna see if they show a highlight, and I'm gonna see what they say. Here, I'm gonna come here. Alright, so they're showing this. I'm just trying to see if they say anything. Okay, what Kobe said is basically correct. I'm not listening to this too much, although I did just hear him say that Renegades wants to play a controlled and slow game, not a fast and loose, which is correct. They do want to play fast in some sense, in the sense that they don't ever want to give up pressure. The only times where Renegades should be looking to give up pressure is when Immortals is being forced to recall because they've been, battered too much by the poke. But that never got a chance to come to a head, fruition, whatever. So okay, so that's it for that.